I'm delighted that you're here with us today. I want to give you a couple of just sort of housekeeping things. We are recording this, and we will put it up so that you can access it. After the event is over, it'll be up either today or tomorrow. We'll email you with the links. We will email also are we emailing the slide? Are we putting the slide deck up available too, Valerie?
Yes, and I will email the handouts like we typically do.
Great, so that will be perfect. If you have questions, feel free. There are two ways to do it. You can drop them into the chat box, or there is a question and answer function, and either one of those is fine. I probably would prefer question and answer a little bit, and we will try to respond to those along the way, but we of course need to be mindful of your time so that we are done at or before the beginning of the hour. And what else do I want to tell you? I think that's it. We've got a couple of poll questions we want to ask you. And with that, I want to introduce the presenter, Valerie Whitman with Leading Response. They are one of my very favorite senior living foresight sponsors. They do just an amazing job of helping providers generate high quality leads at a much lower cost. So there's my little commercial for you. And with that, Valerie, I'm going to turn it over to you to start teaching us something.
Thank you, Steve. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for your time today, and Happy New Year. I can't believe we're in mid-January already. Okay, so we're going to jump right in here. I just want to give you a little bit of background about myself. I come from the industry about 15 years, grew up on the community side, was in regional roles for many years, both sales and marketing and operations. And then about 5 years ago, I joined Leading Response here on the vendor side, and really enjoying helping clients nationwide do great things with lead generation, as well as lowering their cost per acquisition, and training their sales teams to really help support that user experience and nurturing those leads. Leading Response has been around for 25 years, client acquisition firm based out of Tampa and Dallas. We focus primarily on the 55 plus audience, and we are in a few different business lines. One is financial, so wealth managers. We do a lot of work with clients like Merrill Lynch and Prudential. And then also we are in the elective medical space, legal, so elder law, estate planning, and then also healthcare. So we do a lot with dual eligible. So for anyone that's out there looking for those, we can certainly help you with those as well. But we also incorporate quite a bit of consumer behavior data. We run about 3,000 campaigns per month nationwide, and we print about 5 million pieces per month out of our Florida print shop. So we have a lot of great data in terms of the best call to actions and consumer behaviors to really yield the highest response rate for your campaigns, as well as, of course, the strongest conversion rates. Okay, so let's jump right in. A couple of handouts, as Steve mentioned, we'll be sending those out afterwards, and those will be posted as well. And essentially what those are would be the summary of what we're talking about today, which is known as IP append. It's also sometimes called reverse append, direct mail retargeting as well. And then a case study from one of our Medicare insurance clients to just give you an idea for this 55 plus and older target audience. So again, those will be coming out to you afterwards. All right, so the three things we're going to focus on today is how to capture more specific site traffic data, using that insightful data to further develop your overall digital campaign effectiveness, and then also strategies to convert more users. So just before we jump into the first poll question, I have this slide up here really just as a reminder for all of us of what are the most effective lead gen sources. As we know, with all of our marketing plans, we're looking at various strategies and they all convert differently. So of course that, top one as well as the second one in, we would love to have a lot of conversions and a lot of, responses and leads generated from these two. Unfortunately, we can't fill our pipeline, we can't fill our buildings with just professional referrals from the local discharge planners or elder law attorneys. Same thing with the on-site events, which can be a challenge from a consumer behavior perspective, because oftentimes they don't want to meet you on your turf. They want to be able to meet you in a neutral location. The other thing I want to call out on this would be the direct mail and the digital advertising. And those are, of course, some of the things we're going to be talking about today. So You can see that these are great lead generation sources as well. But of course, it also depends on what exactly you're doing in these two areas that will garner the highest response rate and ROI of those campaigns. Okay, so first poll question, Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Let me pull that poll question up. So the question here is, did you know that you can identify those people who are on your site, what they're viewing, and retarget them? Started out being mostly yeses, now it's sort of shrinking, so it looks like we've got about, answers are still coming in, but we have about 75-25 looks like it's where it is going to land. And it looks like we don't have any more response, so I'm going to end that polling. So 76% said yes, 24% no.
Okay, great.
And so
let's talk a little bit more about
up just so people can see it for a minute, and then I'm going to close the window. Okay.
Perfect. So yes, retargeting has been around for a while. Digital retargeting, of course, we all experience that as consumers with, going onto a website and then we're doing something else in our email or what have you, and we see the retargeting banner ads on the right rail. One of the things that is different with this is, of course, it's the digital user and then retargeting them via direct mail. And that doesn't work for every audience, but for the 55 plus and older audience, it does. And then the other difference is that what has been around for a long time, known as this IP append, is where you can narrow it down to the neighborhood that IP address is coming from. And what's different in this instance, and it's a proprietary algorithm that our sister company has, and that is where you can actually tie the IP address back to the physical property address, the residential address, ideally. And then what that allows you to do is append that demographic data that is associated to that property address, that physical address. Now, of course, we never know if it's especially if it's a multi-generational family, who was sitting in front of the computer in that home, but we do know the demographics associated to that home. And so that really helps you further identify, the demographic information in terms of who's on your website. And then also it pinpoints it to that exact property address for the direct mailing purposes, because you don't want to be mailing to 20 homes in the neighborhood knowing that one of those homes matches back to that IP address. So just a couple of things that have changed with the IP append program that's available out there today.
So maybe you'll get to this later, but one of the questions I have for you is, are you also able to identify names, people, ages of people who are living in those homes?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and we're going to review that in a moment. Great question. Okay, so how do you capture more specific site traffic data? So this is just a snapshot of our typical Google Analytics, right? So we all look at these on a very regular basis. And it's great data to have, but it doesn't give you more granular data, which is what we'll talk about next. So this is how it works. Essentially, you've got a pixel on your website that then allows you to track that prospect coming to your site, what they're doing on your site, whether they're converting or not. And then, of course, the ones that aren't converting, those are the ones that you want to be able to capture. The others, of course, are in your CRM. Your sales teams are working them. They're in, some type of marketing automation, cadence that you're doing. So those you already have and you're working those. The others, which unfortunately are the majority, that are leaving your website without taking action, those are the ones that you want the pixel to then be able to follow. And so what we mean by that is when they leave without requesting information, while they're on your site, we're matching their IP address back to their physical residential mailing address. And we can filter out commercial addresses, so you're not mailing to your competitors or vendors or even family members that might be going onto the website to, get a phone number or email, that type of thing. And then what we do from there is once we have that property address, we can then append the demographic data here. And this demographic data is driven by the client. So from one client to the next, they may say, I don't want this age group incorporated. Someone else might say, I want this IPA, income producing asset, minimum to be at 500,000. Maybe it's a CCRC life plan community, and they have a higher qualification in terms of finances. So really these business rules and these filters are driven by the client. And then what we do is we send a direct mail piece with the client's brand standards so that it resonates with that person that was on the website, and that gets to them within 48 hours. Because of course you want to make sure you're getting to your audience quickly before they forget about what site they were just on. So for many of us, we don't remember what site we were on a few days ago or a week ago. So that's a critical component to this, is getting your brand back in front of them in a different way, in this case, direct mail, with a very strong call to action. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Because what we never know is why that person didn't convert on your website, but we do know that they didn't convert. And so now you have another opportunity to engage with them. Okay. So some of the data that you can receive from this process is some very specific demographic data. This is from one of our clients that has about 50 properties, and they have the pixel on each one of their individual properties. Something to note as well is this works a little differently depending on how you're driving traffic to your sites. So many of you are using individual sites and you're driving traffic to those individual sites, but then some of you are also using your main site where you have, find your local community, and you're driving the majority of your traffic through that main site. So this would be just one snapshot of some of the demographics that we can look at. This one is net worth. So it really just gives you an idea, and this is just a 1-month snapshot of the different criterias of the net worth of those users on your site.
So let me just see if I can get a little click. Can you go back to that for a second? So in this particular case, there were 1,080 users on that site, and this is a breakdown on those of those people and their net worth, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Now, is that 1,080 100% of the visitors, or what percentage are you able to actually get this information on?
Yes, so these are the folks that are matching back, and we'll walk through a bit of a process a few slides down where it'll show you, not every user to your site every month is going to match back, and that's because of bots. It's because of commercial IP addresses and various things that are not true users. And so these are the folks that are basically coming through the filter and are able to match back the demographics.
Cool.
Okay, so this is another snapshot. This one is estimated income of the visitors. And so this is also very helpful so that, as you're looking at your digital strategies, if you have access to this data, you can then identify, am I driving the right qualified traffic to the site? Is that maybe a challenge as to why I'm not seeing the site conversion that I want to see? And does that mean maybe I need to be changing up, some of my digital strategies, keyword strategies, things like that? So again, it's just more insight, and this all comes from the pixel that you place on your website, and within a few weeks, depending on the volume of traffic you have, you'll be able to see some of these data points. Last snapshot would be the age. So you had asked about this, Steve. So again, this is just a snapshot of 1 month for one particular community's traffic. And what's interesting about this one with this particular client is that what they didn't realize until they saw this data is that they really do have a younger adult child age group. We help support this community or this organization with their IL, AL, and memory care. So they typically see, the various ages. But what they didn't realize, and this was more than just 1 month, but they saw over the course of about 6 months that they had a younger adult child than they had anticipated. And so, again, having that data helps you better market to that audience, provide that relevant content, and essentially know who's on your site. Okay, Steve, second poll question, please.
You betcha. I gotta put up the right button. Okay. Here we go. So the question is, do you currently offer downloadable content to your visitors, such as care assessment or financial tools? Looks like this is a bit more balanced, a little bit more yes than no. The answers are coming in. And it's actually about 50-50 is what we're looking at. So I'm going to end the, no, got one, I think that's it. So we're going to call that quit, and I will display the results for you. But it is 48 to 52%. So 48% of you do offer downloadable or tools or that kind of thing, and a little over half of you don't.
Great. Good to see. It's definitely something that we run into often, where we see stronger response rates, stronger conversion rates for those clients that do have, you know, various tools on their website, and allowing people to essentially just, you know, educate themselves, use the tools that are available, share them with other family member decision makers. And it just makes your website much more robust and helps them see you as more of a partner and an advocate in their journey.
So question for you, I love this question. Are you able to place pixels on a landing page as well as on a website?
Yes. Great
Perfect.
question.
That is great. Hardly ever do you get one that's that easy to answer. That's perfect. Thank you.
Like it. Okay, so second area that we're going to focus on here would be analyzing that insightful data to further develop your overall digital strategies. And again, this information comes from our clients that we work with on a very regular basis, our senior living clients in particular that are focused on that adult child and that senior you know, potential resident, particularly for that 55 plus active adult in IL, because those tend to be folks that are using the site themselves and have an interest in the content. So, you know, at the end of the day, we all understand that you've got to have a robust website and have that engaging, you know, compelling content that's relevant for people. And that's not easy to do. So what we see that really helps our clients, and again, based on the data that they're getting back from the traffic that they're seeing to their website, is changing up keyword strategies. So again, you know, you have to be able to have the data to then interpret it and understand what you need to maybe tweak. And in some cases, you may not need to change anything. It might be, you know, working very well for you, and you're able to just essentially retarget those folks that are not taking action on your site.
So Valerie, you've talked a little bit about this downloadable content and tools. Do you have any data on what it does in terms of increasing the likelihood that you're going to get leads?
Yeah, great question. So we see, and we'll talk about this a little bit further in, we see a 5% conversion for clients that are retargeting those folks that left their website, and they're retargeting them with a call to action that brings them to a vanity URL is typically what we recommend. So you make it easy for them to go back to your site and provide that downloadable content for them. So, you know, it's hard to know if that's the only reason, but it's definitely something that we're seeing work well, where people have gone to the site, they didn't see what they wanted or needed, left the site, received that mailer, and it was a very specific call to action, not, you know, visit our website for more information. They were already on your website, and they obviously either didn't find what they were looking or for whatever reason they didn't take action. So providing them that very specific information that they feel is a great tool and it's downloadable so they can share it and really gives them some great information. We're seeing, you know, about 5% of people saying, yes, I want that information, and they're going back to that site or they're calling.
Perfect.
So it's great to hear that about 50% do have tools like this. For those that don't, certainly, you know, it's something to, you know, put some resources towards and start developing, because more and more the consumer wants to see relevant data. They have an expectation that they're going to go to your website and find the information that they need and have tools. So it's really important to be able to, you know, incorporate these things. And there are certainly plenty of organizations out there that are supporting behind the scenes for things like care assessment tools.
Yeah. The other thing I would just add to that is Neil Patel, who's a huge digital marketing person outside senior living. He actually put out a video a few months ago where he talked about how powerful tools are from an SEO standpoint and from keeping people on sites. And so there are lots of ways to build those tools. So I want to sort of reiterate that it makes a lot of sense. And even on our side, it's one of the things we've been talking about doing. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And those tools are great beyond just your website, right? Because you can repurpose them. They're great for the sales team to be able to just shoot them off via email. I was talking to a client last week actually who did a mystery shop. And one of the things that the sales director did was immediately after the visit, there was a question about finances for dad. And she emailed them this great tool that wasn't available on the website, but it was something that she sent to them right afterwards for them to be able to plug in and identify, okay, this is about how many years dad can stay, private pay in the community. And so it's not just about the website, to your point, Steve. I mean, but it's great for your sales team as well, and just to, again, be able to have your brand seen as an advocate and a partner that has put time and effort into these various tools.
Yeah, I like that idea that you reach out as a follow-up and say, you need to calculate costs or those kinds of things. And so it gives them some action to do and gives them additional value that's very personalized. I love that.
Right. Great. So the second one, content and design. So again, some of the data that you can gather from the Pixel is the activity of folks on the site. So for example, you can see someone that is age 18 to 35, let's say, and they're spending time on your careers page. Well, they're likely not a consumer that is looking for your services, but they might be a job seeker. And so depending on your focus there, we certainly know in this industry, it's a major focus. You may want to include them in a mailer, but it's not going to be the same content that it would be, of course, to the consumer. So it's really important to be able to have that data to know who's on your site and what they're doing, what pages are they spending the most time on, because then that can help you prioritize, which pages you maybe need to focus on a little more, whether those be the care pages, services pages. And storytelling is a big deal. I'm sure we all know that, and we talk about it a lot at conferences, but really being able to incorporate stories, even if they're short video clips or testimonials. We have several clients that do a lot with that, and they see some really great returns. And then the call to actions, again, we harp on this a lot in leading response. It has to be a strong call to action. So for those of you that are still struggling with, being able to get people to respond and having that compelling call to action, it's so important to get that piece right. And some of it is going to take time and A/B testing, and they're not all going to be the strongest call to actions. But being able to have that data and also, of course, understand from a consumer behavior perspective what they're most interested in and what's most important to them. So for example, if you have someone that goes back and goes onto that vanity URL and they download the care assessment tool, well, that's obviously something that's important to them. So being able to engage with them with more relevant content around care and services, you're going to have a higher response rate of ROI with that particular lead than you would if you're just sending that basic message of, visit our website or call our number. They're on your website. They obviously don't want to engage in a conversation with your team just yet. And so again, you've got to meet that consumer where they're at. Okay, third poll question, Steve.
Here we go. This question is, do you feel like your digital strategies are yielding the qualified leads to grow your business? The no's are winning pretty big. Got it. And it looks like we are done. I'm going to share the results. So no's win it with 70%, yeses with 30%. Would have also maybe been interesting, I didn't think about this until just now, to be able to put in, I don't know. And because I think that as I talk to people about digital strategies, that often that's a big challenge.
Right,
so.
Right. Agreed. I think we probably have a separate conversation in general, right, on the challenges that we all face from
That's
a
right.
perspective on
Exactly.
digital. Great to have digital, and it's becoming more traditional marketing nowadays than it used to be when we would say traditional versus digital. I mean, it's been around now for quite some time, but the consumer is always changing. There's always more bells and whistles coming out, and so it typically is a challenge. That's a little bit higher than I expected to see, 70%, but Also a challenge for our industry too, right? Because we've got two different audiences, one of which is not all that, savvy in terms of digital content. And there's a lot of noise out there too. It's difficult.
Well, and I think the other challenge that I see is that people don't really know what the benchmark is. So how do you really know whether you're successful? Because successful sort of means, maybe this isn't fair, but it sort of means, am I more successful, less successful, or the same as everybody else? I'll use a personal example. I'm a big LinkedIn user. If you're a reader, you probably know that. And I sat back and I'm thinking, I'm not very good at this social media stuff. And then when I actually stopped and was more rational about it, I thought, you know what? That's actually not true. I mean, at least with LinkedIn, I'm a rock star. And so maybe we're too hard on ourselves sometimes. I don't know.
I'm going to tell myself that next time I'm on LinkedIn, Steve. Thanks.
Good. I hope you do. I hope you do.
Okay, so the third and final topic we're going to review today, and then we'll open it up for questions, is how to improve your conversions of those missed opportunities. So as I mentioned earlier on, we see our clients achieve a conversion rate of 5%. Now let's talk a little bit more about what that 5% is, because many of you may be thinking, wow, geez, it's only 5%, that's really low. But let's take a closer look at what that actually equates to. So for example, when we think through that process again, as we talked about earlier with the Pixel, let's say you've got a community that has 1,000 monthly unique visitors, and you're converting 30 of those to web submission forms. They're in your CRM, you're working those. And then let's say that the Pixel is showing that you have a 45% match back. And what we mean by match back is that they're matching back to your predetermined qualifications. So financial, age, proximity to community, length of time on the website, pages on the website, whatever it is that you have previously determined is kind of your, definition of qualified. So then that from there gives you monthly increased brand awareness to qualified visitors of 437. So essentially you're sending out a direct mail piece to 437 of the users that were on your website that meet your qualifications. And so then that 5% we see is new leads yielded monthly of 22. And again, that may not sound like a lot, but at the same time, if you're only getting 30 web submission forms a month from the original users, then you're almost doubling that by retargeting these folks and understanding who they are from a demographic perspective, and also, what their activity was on your site, so that you can provide that relevant content back. And then the expense to retarget per lead is about $54 in this scenario.
Yeah. Well, and what I really like about this is, the way I tend to think about it is, so if you get 22 leads and you can close even just 10% of those, right, that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten, that's a pretty significant number over the course of the year. That's what potentially 24 additional residents you wouldn't otherwise have. And that's pretty powerful.
Right. Well, and when we think about it, right, and we were just talking about this, and that was the purpose of the poll question is, we spend so much time on digital. Many of us now have a digital team within our marketing infrastructure, or we're outsourcing it. However you're managing it, it's a lot of time and money towards digital. And so to be able to have it really work well for you, and also provide the analytics back to you so you can better understand what may not be working, so that you can go back and re-strategize on some of those various campaigns, is hugely valuable. So looking at your digital expense and then adding $54 to that to generate another new lead that is now re-engaged with you, that already was on your website and now is in your CRM, and your sales team is working, is something I would have loved to have as a regional back in the day.
Cool.
All right, so a couple of things here in terms of strategies that our clients see work well. So this is essentially, when the user's on your site, and then what kind of relevant content you should be retargeting them with. So you'll see here, if they're spending the majority of the time on care services pages, again, I can't say enough the importance of the vanity URL, because again, think about it from the consumer. It's a direct mail piece, so it's not like they're clicking a banner ad where they're going to be able to just go directly to the landing page that you want them to go to. And you
So, okay, Valerie, let me stop you for a second. I'm going to confess my ignorance here. What's a vanity URL?
It's a very easy address. So it might be, seniorhousing.com versus your full URL that is just a lot more for that person to have to type in.
So I've got
a catchy term, something that's easy for them to remember, which, is not easy to do because all the catchy terms, of course, are already taken. But it's a way to be able to make it easy for that consumer to get back to your site and in a different way than they were before. Because if you give them a mailer and they say, oh, I have already been to xyz.com, why would I go back there? That's not a very compelling call to action for me. But if you give them that specific vanity URL and you're saying in the message to them that you want them to be able to see the value in the care assessment tool, or see the upcoming events that are happening from an educational perspective, whatever it might be, you want them to quickly and easily see that you're not asking them to just go back to the website, which they were already on 3 days ago.
Perfect. Okay, I've got 3 questions here. I don't know whether you want to work through this slide first or you want the questions.
Sure, go ahead with the questions.
Okay, the first one is that $54 a lead for 22 new leads, or is that the cost for the retargeting?
That would be what your cost for retargeting is. So the reason that we don't have cost per lead here is because you've already spent money to drive that lead digitally to your website. So you want to factor that in, whatever your top of the funnel cost was to get that missed opportunity, essentially, that visitor to your site. So for our process, yes, it would be $54 to generate that new lead, or essentially take advantage of that missed lead because they didn't take action and fill out a contact form.
So next question, how do you write the marketing message for the retargeting, the increased clicks? Is there some sort of a formula you use? She says the message on the banner ads is not consistent when you get to the landing page, which causes a high bounce rate. I'm not sure I completely understand that. Maybe that makes sense to you?
It sounds like in terms of how you write the messaging, it sounds like the banner ads are not working as well. And if I'm understanding that question right, so the banner ads, unfortunately, we all have become immune to banner ads because they're constantly there. In fact, because I'm on the senior living side of things, I'm on my clients' websites all the time. So in my social news feeds, I see all kinds of things marketing to me about senior living. And I'm thinking, I am not a consumer of senior living, not yet anyway. But that's the majority of the web traffic that I am, using day to day. And so, it's important to be able to have a strong, solid message that, again, is going to be somewhat of A/B testing, right? So when you're doing the direct mail, there's a couple of things about this, which is really nice, is that you can change up your call to action at any time because it's print on demand. So it's not like you have this one message and you have to live with it for the next 6 months when you're not seeing the response rates coming in and you're not seeing, the ROI. So you can change it up, but of course you want to give it due time to make sure that it either is or isn't working.
So the direct mail pieces that you're sending out on these IP appends, is that something that I as a provider need to create? Is it something you create? How does that work?
Sure, great question. It's really a combination. I mean, we create the content based on the consumer behavior and all of the A/B testing that we do on a very regular basis. Again, we print 5 million pieces per month that go directly to this 55 plus consumer segment. With that being said, we incorporate all of the client's brand standards. The client has full approval before anything goes to print and out the door. It's very much a partnership where we're providing the data and the insights to the client, but they know their messaging and they know the culture and what they're trying to disseminate out to the consumer. Okay,
perfect. Couple more questions on economics. What are the costs of this other than the mailing and the printing of the direct mail piece? What's the cost to acquire the addresses?
Sure. So everything is built into a per piece price. So essentially it's $2.70 per piece. And what that equates to is the data to append the information back, and then the first class mailer, because you have to go first class, because keep in mind, it's about time sensitivity. You've got to get it in front of that consumer as quickly as possible. At the end of the day, we're still dealing with snail mail versus the digital banner ad. So $2.70 per piece, and that will get you the analytics that we send on a monthly basis. You actually set up the pixel on your website yourself, so it's very easy to do. We send you the instructions. And then the other nice thing about this is that, you know, depending on the volume that you have, if you have a very large number of unique visitors, which is a great problem to have, and you say, geez, I don't want to send to all of them, that's going to eat up my whole budget. You can set budget parameters and say, you know, I only want to do $250 a month for this effort. And you can increase it from there. And, you know, one of the things with this program is that you definitely need to have some volume of traffic. And we can test that within the first 3 to 4 weeks of having that pixel on, because what you don't know yet is you may have a lot of, let's say, those 1,000 unique visitors are bots. They might be vendors, competitors. So, you know, it's tough to know what your match back rate will be until we start the process. And we can do that, you know, to get you up and running within a couple $100s to get the pixel on. But it's $2.70 per piece, and you can pretty much, you know, determine what works for you in terms of your monthly budget.
Okay. So when we look at this $54 in this per lead in this one example, it would be 22 times 54 for 437.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Question that's quick. How often should you blog on a senior living site?
Great question. It's an interesting question. I was on a client site today, and I saw a July 30th blog date was the most recent one that they had. Blogs are a challenge. I mean, you know, it's tough to keep up with them, but I would say about once a week. And I'm thinking about my master's in marketing class. I don't remember the title of it, but it was all about blogging. And you know, it's going to increase your overall user content that you can repurpose with, but also be able to drive traffic and allow people that relevant information, because people want to go to the blog and see what's happening. It's kind of like the news section, you know. So it's really important, I would say, at least once a week to have something there. And again, that's an opportunity for storytelling in that area also.
Yeah, that sounds like a good article for somebody like Senior Living Foresight should write to talk about that.
I agree.
Yeah, the one thing I would just let me just add one thing. I think sometimes people make blogging too complicated. So a 300-400 word story, and it needs to be good, but it doesn't need to be so perfect that you spend forever editing it or you never get it done. So I would just answer that. So here's the question. The question is, how do I get started with the process with you? But I want to actually twist that question a little bit. It sounds kind of complicated. So let's say I came in and I thought, man, I want to try this. What would that just sort of, you know, at a high level, walk me through the steps of what that would look like?
Sure. It's really fairly straightforward. I mean, we are not an ad agency where you'd have us on retainer and managing all of your, you know, marketing. We're essentially a client acquisition firm. We have several solutions that work very well that are plug and play solutions for clients. So what we would do in terms of starting the process is we would send you the agreement, which is basically just, you know, here are the costs and here's what you bring to the table in terms of putting the pixel on your website. Here's what we provide to you. So simple agreement. And then what we typically do is a deposit, because we don't know what your activity matchback rate is going to be yet. So a deposit of about $1,500 per community site, or if you're launching it off your corporate site, then we would just essentially start with a deposit, simple as $1,500. We give you the instructions for the pixel, and usually your web administrator will get that up and running for you on your website. And then we start behind the scenes looking at the data coming in over the course of 7 to 10 days, but it could be closer to 3 to 4 weeks if you don't have a lot of volume. And this is definitely something that if you don't have a lot of volume, and I define that as less than 1,000 unique visitors per month to your site, it's just not worthwhile. What I would recommend there is spend more time increasing your traffic and then implement a program like this. Right. And then from there, we start print on demand. We get your business rules from you. We work through the data that we've received over those few weeks and put in some very specific call to actions that we know are working well. And then it's just ongoing in terms of checking what you're seeing on your end for conversion rates with your URL, trackable phone numbers that we can see on our end and make whatever tweaks necessary.
So in terms of creating the direct mail, we would sort of use templates that you create, customized based on my community or my company's specific requirements, or we'd send you our current collateral and you'd create something fresh out of that, or what does that process look like?
Great question. Either one. We're happy to take a look at any collateral that you already have that's either working well or you want to test it. But we also will implement using the templates and implement the consumer behaviors and the best call to actions and send those over to the client, in draft form so that they can approve them or make any tweaks if they'd like.
Great. So a few more questions. Minimum requirement for retargeting direct mail, or is an ongoing process? It sounds like sort of your minimum is 1,000 unique visitors a month.
Right. Yes. And then on the cost side, it would be about $250 per month minimum per website.
Okay. Perfect. What's the average number of mail pieces sent out per a single project? Or, maybe the better question would be sort of what's average per month?
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting question because we see that run really rampant across the board of traffic, and for a few reasons. One is, as I mentioned before, some clients will go and direct traffic to the individual community sites versus others that will do it at the home office corporate parent account site. And then you're going to have a lot more volume if you're doing it that way versus the individual community. So it really does depend on how you're directing the traffic. But then, it's also about, being able to identify what your costs are and what you're able to allocate towards it.
Perfect. And then do you offer the data append without the mailing?
Great question. We've started to do more of that. So the answer is yes. But typically what happens is when people see that data, now they want to be able to retarget. And the only way to retarget to these folks is using a service like ours because they haven't opted in. So you can't get the list of names and contact information until they opt in. And when they do, they're in your CRM, just like the web leads that we're converting previously.
Okay, great. And I think that is all my questions.
Great. Okay. Well, and so, we're going to send this deck out. How are we doing on time, Steve?
We are at 44 minutes past the hour, so we're like perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great. So these are just a few other call to actions that we see work well for clients. But really, again, it comes down to what that user's activity is, because again, they're not converting. So we never know exactly why, but oftentimes if you can re-engage with them and provide them very relevant content, then you have essentially another, shot at, engaging with these folks.
Yeah. Do you put a pixel on every page on the website?
No, great question. So the pixel goes on the main page that you're driving site traffic to, and then it follows that IP address throughout their activity on the site. So if they spend 40 minutes on the site, it will track where they go on those 40 minutes or 5 minutes.
But ultimately, it would be the pixel would go wherever you would expect them to hit the website first. So a landing page or something like that.
Right, which is why it's important to know when we're setting up a new client if they're driving traffic to individual pages or to a home office, corporate site.
Great, perfect.
All right, so this is just a quick snapshot of our portal where we see a lot of online traffic. So this is really just as a reminder that you have to be able to have the ability for people to interact with you online, not just filling out that contact form, because everyone knows nowadays they fill out a contact form, they're going to get a phone call or an email or both. And so, having that relative content on your website that also speaks to the way that person wants to communicate with you is really important. So again, back to that call to action and that vanity URL, and really being able to give them something that says, I'm going to take this postcard I just got in the mail, I'm going to sit down either on my mobile or open up my laptop and go back to this site because there's more for me to see that I didn't see the first time around.
Cool.
Okay, so these are a couple of topics that we see work very well in terms of educational content. This can often be tied to a face-to-face event as a call to action, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So it's things like, basic general information that consumers have very real misconceptions of. So, it's how to approach the subject with a family member. And again, this content can also be used on your website, like we were talking about before, whether that be downloadable content or incorporated into your blogs or short video clips, however you want to engage with your audience. And I would recommend doing it in various ways, since people like to absorb content in various ways. But these are very typical of what you would see in terms of educational face-to-face or e-books, things like that, that will work well on your direct mail piece when you're retargeting, or even digital banner ads too.
Cool. I like that.
All right, so key takeaways. Be sure you're utilizing your website data to its full capability. I mean, that's something that we know more and more. We want that website to really work well for us, and Google Analytics are great, but we definitely have the ability to get more information and change up our strategies to have a stronger response rate and ROI for our digital dollars. And then utilizing that data with digital strategies, as well as building your user personas. So that's something that we didn't really talk about too much, but depending on, again, how much traffic you get to your website, which we know as just consumers in general, people go to websites first before they actually reach out and connect. And so that's certainly very much the case in our industry. And so being able to have a better idea of what is the average age of that user on my website? What is the average, IPA or net worth? That's all very important information to have as you're building your personas of your consumers overall.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've been thinking that that's one of the things I've not ever really seen anybody talk about, is actually getting that data and then asking yourself, is my website actually talking to the people I want to talk to? Are those the right visitors, or I'm getting wrong visitors? So that's really fascinating to me.
Right.
That should be another article, by the way.
Well, and that's one of the things, like we talked about before, the Google Analytics data is great, but it only goes so far. It's kind of like basic demographics. It's not going to give you ailment data and familial connections, which is more of that specialty hyper-targeted data. So it's really important to be able to have that information and then use it across the board in your marketing strategies, not just from, who's on your website.
Yep.
And then tracking that data over time to compare and determine the adjustments that you're making are successful in improving conversions. And again, that's going to help you overall with your digital success and also your overall, marketing success and being able to fill your buildings. All right. Any other questions you see coming in, Steve?
I don't. I think that is it. This is really cool. I learned a bunch of stuff, and you've given us some additional topics for us to be writing about and talking about. And to me, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't know. I'd be interested in sort of getting additional feedback on this, but it's such a terrific way to expand your reach and get your buildings fuller.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think one thing to keep in mind that I think some people, and I've heard this in the past, not so much anymore, because I think it's becoming more, standard, and the expectation from the consumer is that, we see and know all things, right? Especially when they're out there on the World Wide Web. So one of the things we used to hear is, well, geez, that seems really creepy that, we're going to watch what these people are doing on our website. And then we're going to send them something in the mail that essentially says, hey, we saw you were on our website 2 days ago, and this is how much time you spent on this page, or this is what you did on that page. And so, nowadays, just like digital banner ads and retargeting, it's almost an expectation of the consumer that you're going to know what their needs are, what their wants are, and all the more reason to provide that relevant content. And of course, you're not going to do it in a way that comes across creepy. It's going to be more of that brand awareness through the mailbox versus online, where they were already, researching and spent some time on. And so really, it's just providing them more relevant content and increasing your chances to convert more of your traffic.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you very much. This is awesome. I appreciate it a ton. I think we've gotten all the questions answered. We will send out some emails over the next couple of days with access to the slides and to the recording of the webinar. So I appreciate it a ton. This is really good.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everyone.
much.
Have a good
Thank you
day.
for attending. Bye-bye.